Welcome to the Heart for God podcast. With many years of experience pastoring and helping to start churches, Dr. Jim Townsley has some practical and biblical advice that can be a great help to you and your ministry. On this podcast, Dr. Townsley and other guests with special expertise cover a variety of topics. His goal is to help you lead your church to be a healthy, strong, and balanced ministry, and for your family to be happy, healthy, and living for the Lord.
Well, thanks for joining us today in our podcast. I have with me again Dr. John Hamblin. Of course, I think if you listened last week, you know he is an evangelist and travels all over the United States and different places in the world, and certainly used greatly of God. I appreciate his friendship. But we're going to talk about something that not often discussed, and that is ethics in the ministry. Dr. Hamblin, good to have you with us today.
Thank you, Dr. Townsley. Thrilled to be with you on the podcast today, and appreciate those who've tuned in to listen.
So I'm going to give you the microphone here, and I want you to talk a little bit about, just kind of give us a primer here on the matter of ethics.
Well, what a great topic and theme and truth, that of ethics. I believe we need to return to an old-fashioned emphasizing of ethics. Psalm 25 and 21 says, "Let integrity and uprightness preserve me, for I wait on thee." If anybody on planet Earth should have personal ethics, I would contend, and I know, Dr. Townsley, you would readily agree, it ought to be the preacher. It ought to be the preacher's wife. It ought to be the staff member. It ought to be the Christian school teacher. It ought to be the Christian school administrator. It ought to be the assistant pastor. It ought to be the assistant pastor's wife. Why, I'd go so far to say it ought to be the butcher, the baker, and even the maker. Basically, ethics are a person's moral principles and values that guide their behavior in everyday life and interactions with the world. It was my mentor's mentor, so that would be Dr. Tom Malone Sr.'s mentor, Dr. Bob Jones Sr., who famously said, "Do right till the stars fall. And when the stars fall, still do right." He also said along the same line, "Do right if all of hell's cannons are trained on you." And so there ought to be that emphasis of ethics. And as servants of God, in whatever sphere or station of service we have, there ought to be every day that emphasizing of ethics. And ethics flow and are founded simply in integrity. I think there are four truths that are in the orbit of ethics that flow from integrity. First of all, there's the place of integrity. I'll let our listeners look the verse up at a later time, but if you're taking notes, scratch down Psalm 41:12. There's a place of integrity. What I love about Psalm 41 and 12, it tells me that God has a special station, a special level, a special status, if you will, for those that have integrity. I want you to listen carefully to this verse, Psalm 41 and verse number 12. "And as for me, thou upholdest me in mine integrity." And listen now, "and settest me before thy face forever." So according to Psalm 41 and 12, there is a place of integrity. Well, I want to have that kind of integrity, that God would set me before his face. That speaks of communion. That speaks of a closeness. So there's a place of integrity. There's a privilege of integrity. Proverbs 19 and verse number 1, a very famous verse in regards to this very truth, talks about it is better. And I just thrill at that truth. Proverbs 19:1, better is the poor that walketh in his integrity. So there's a privilege of integrity. God, when talking about integrity, he uses the word better. And so I can't, in the Bible, find anything greater for a believer to have than that of integrity. So there's the place of integrity. There's the privilege of integrity. There's what I call the persistence of integrity. That's in Job 2 and 3. We'll let our listeners look that up at their convenience, where after Satan hits Job the first time, he has that conversation with God, and God talks about how that Job had integrity. And although he was being afflicted and though he was being attacked, Job was still going to do right. There's a persistence of integrity. If a person only does right when things are going their way, that's not integrity. Integrity is doing right when things aren't going our way. Integrity is when, the bills are high and the funds are low. Integrity is when maybe we're not on everybody's A list. We're not the flavor of the month. Integrity is just doing right in the dark. And then the fourth thing I just want to give and mention of this orbit that's in the area of ethics, and integrity is the touchstone, and the ethics flow out of the integrity one has, and that is the protection of integrity. There's an actual protection that comes with integrity. Psalm 26:1, judge me, O Lord, for I've walked in mine integrity. I've trusted also in the Lord. Therefore, I shall not slide. Boy, that tells me, Psalm 26:1, that there's a firm footing that comes with integrity. When a person backslides, there's a lack of integrity. When a person gets away from the Lord, there's a lack of integrity. And so I'm grateful for those things that flow out of integrity, which makes up the ethics that a believer operates and deals with others from.
Well, that's all terrific. I think in a practical way, I have some great friends, and you have some great godly men of great integrity, and pastors that just, they're going to do right no matter what. But unfortunately, you come across men, and they're in the ministry, and they don't have integrity. And there's nothing more disgusting than someone who's representing God, but they do not have ethics.
Yes,
sir. It seems like every area has that church where people have a problem, they go to that church. People don't like something, they go to that church. Pastor never calls anyone. Pastor never checks on those people. In some cases, that church will work to get people out of another church and bring them in. Now, that's unethical, in my opinion. If somebody came to our church from another church, I call that pastor immediately. Say, did you know this person was in our church? What should I do about this? How should I handle it? I want your guidance. I want to be a help here. But that, unfortunately, doesn't always happen. And I think in financial matters, sometimes that happens where pastors do things that are unethical. They misuse funds, take advantage of certain things. And I'm sure you've seen things like that as well.
I believe that when a man is loose on his beliefs, he's always loose on his behavior. And in an area where there is a so-called church that has a reputation of people can go and the so-called pastor never calls the preacher from where they're coming from, it usually doesn't take Sherlock Holmes and his sidekick Watson to find out that there's already a drift that's been going on for a long time, and that standards have more than slipped. And when asked, what is your position on the Bible, after 10 minutes of talking, you still don't know what they really believe. And I've often said, if you ask someone what they believe about the Bible, and after 5 minutes they still haven't answered, but they're still talking, they don't want you to know they don't have a position on the Bible.
Yeah.
It's been interesting to me, and it's a warning light when a man or a ministry has bad beliefs. The Siamese twin is always bad behavior. Huh. Now, I know for a fact that decades you've been there in the Northeast and have the reputation of ethics being just everything. And I believe the Bible teaches that. And I believe it brings the smile of God. I believe it brings the amen of God upon that which we do. It brings the favor of God. And it's sad when a preacher runs fast and loose with doctrine, with morals, with finances. And it certainly is an ethical problem, which goes back to a lack of integrity.
Well, ultimately, people will lose faith in a pastor and perhaps in the church and maybe even God, because eventually that behavior comes out. But there are those who are self-promoters. They talk about how they boast about this and that. This is the best church. I'm the greatest. Where, no church is like our church. I mean, ultimately that comes around. I mean, I've been here 5 decades, 50 years. So there are churches that come and go. Everybody, that's the newest thing. And then they find out, oh, there's problems there. And then they go somewhere else. But through all that, we just keep doing what we're doing. And I think that is important for young men to realize. Just do what's right. As you said, Bob Jones indicated, just do right.
I don't think there's anything that is as valuable in our ministry as our integrity, as our character. I've never told this story publicly, but there's a church that I've preached in for years and years, and has a very special place in my heart. The church knows me, I know them. Their pastor had a tragic accident, and I preached his funeral, and one of the deacons surrendered to preach and is now the pastor, and it's just making a difference in their area and has for decades. Well, through the years, countless meetings I've preached there, revival meetings, Bible conferences, anniversary services. They've, through the years, just being kind, have bought me a wristwatch, and a very, very nice wristwatch. And one year, the deacon handed me his credit card, and he said, I don't have the time to go get you a watch, but the deacons want to get you a watch, and from the preacher as well. And here's my credit card, and the store's right by the church, the jeweler. You go get it, sign my name on my credit card, and you just bring it to me. We want to do that. And so before the service that next night, I went and purchased a watch, and wear it proudly to this day. And when I got to the service that night, I gave him his credit card, and I gave him the receipt. And I said, my brother, here's the receipt, it's a credit card. He looked at it and said, you didn't use my credit card. I said, no. He said, but I told you to use my, and I said, well, I bought the watch, that's the receipt. If you want to do something in regards to that, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine as well. But my testimony is far more valuable to me than any wristwatch. I'm not going to sign your name on your credit card for you to get mad at me when I preach something you don't like and accuse me of falsifying your signature. Now, this that is a dear friend, but it doesn't matter. There's no watch in this world, or for that matter, anything that's worth the price of our integrity, our character, our testimony.
Well, one last thing I want to throw in here. Being an evangelist, you go by faith. You don't have a fee. You don't say, here's how much I want if you want me to come, although there are people that do that. So you go by faith. And there are, I'm sure you've got stories. Someone says, well, here's a cup of coffee and some cookies, go on your way, God bless you, be warmed and filled. But then on the other hand, you go to church and it's like, I can't believe the amount of money, and sometimes it's a small church. I can't believe the love offering is so great, so high. I can't, and God figures that all out. God will take care of you. But I would not want to be that church that doesn't do right for a speaker coming in. And so we always try to do more for missionaries and guest speakers to make up for the fact that sometimes people don't do what is right.
It's amazing how it balances out. And a note and an observation that I've noted is that if a preacher tries to figure out how that works, for instance, he'll look at a crowd and say, okay, this is what I'll go away from this meeting with. He's extremely foolish, because it just doesn't work that way.
No.
It's a God thing. And the way God provides and takes care of and meets every single need, and so many times takes care of wants as well, just is overwhelming to see his hand in those kind of things. And the straighter that an individual is, the cleaner an individual is. Like the old preachers used to say, clean as a hound's tooth and gun barrel straight. The more that's the case, the more there's that smile of God and the amen of God.
Well, as I go out and speak, as you go out and speak, I am confident God will take care of us. But if you're a young preacher or even an older preacher, if you don't take care of people that come in, that travel, pay their expenses on a love offering, then shame on you. That's certainly unethical. And churches have the money to do it. It's just a matter of, as you said, integrity.
I believe you're 100% correct, Dr. Townsley.
Well, we'll end on that note and give people some things to think about. But ethics are important because it's character, it's integrity, it's just doing what's right, it's pleasing God, all those things. Well, thanks for joining us today, and hopefully you'll join us again next week. Dr. Hamblin, thank you for being with me today.
Thank you, dear friend. Great to be your guest on your podcast, as always.
God bless.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the podcast, consider sharing it with a friend. You can also follow at Dr. Townsley on Twitter or on Facebook at Jim Townsley.